Hello, boys and girls. This is Mrs. Hunter, and I'm going to be reading Indian Shoes aloud to you by Cynthia Leitich Smith. And so the first thing I do when I get a new book is I look on the back cover. And there's not much here, but it says, "Take a walk in these Indian shoes." I wonder if that means literally take a walk, like put on Indian shoes and walk in them. Or sometimes when someone says, "take a walk in my shoes," it means like walk in my shoes in terms of living my life, right? Like learning and seeing what my experiences are day to day. So since there's nothing on the back cover, let's look at this inside front cover, which seems to have our summary here. So let's see what this book is about. What do Indian shoes look like anyway? Like beautiful beaded moccasins or high top with bright orange shoelaces? Ray Half Moon prefers high tops, but he gladly trades them for a nice pair of moccasins for his grandpa. After all, it's Grandpa Half Moon who's always there to help Ray get in and out of scrapes, like the time they are forced to get creative after a homemade haircut makes Ray's head look like a lawn mowing accident. And here I think the word scrapes doesn't mean like an actual scrape on your skin, but I think scrapes means like incidents, right? Or tough times. This collection of interrelated stories is heartwarming and laugh out loud funny. Cynthia Leitich Smith writes with wit and candor about what it's like to grow up as a Seminole Cherokee boy who is just as happy pounding the pavement in windy Chicago as rowing on a lake in rural Oklahoma. Okay, so it tells me a little bit about our setting. It's probably going to go back and forth from Chicago, Illinois to the state of Oklahoma. Okay, and I also find out that our main character is Native American, and he is part of the Seminole Cherokee tribe. So I'm excited to get started. So let's go ahead. Indian shoes. And here I see my table of contents, tells me my chapters. Okay, so let's get started with chapter 1, Indian shoes, and we're going to read into part of Don't Forget the Pants, which I'm wondering what that's about. Don't forget your pants. Okay, Indian shoes. Ray and Grandpa Half Moon traipsed down the cracked sidewalk of a steel and stone city. Ray tracked Grandpa's steps, danced to the rat-a-tat-a clang of a trash can band, and skipped beneath the ruffling branches. "Let's duck in here," Grandpa Half Moon began, "and say morning." When the wind rustled into Murphy family antiques, Ray and Grandpa whistled in with it. At the welcome mat, Grandpa said morning to Junior Murphy. Ray retied his neon orange shoelaces and took a look around the store. The shop brimmed with treasures: an autographed baseball, a Chinese lantern, ostrich feathers, a basket of antique buttons on a pedestal, a tabletop held by a real elephant leg, a moose head mounted high on the wall. Where are the coats that match the old buttons? Ray wondered. What happened to the rest of the elephant? Who took the body of the moose glaring down? Grandpa asked, "Do you see that?" A pair of men's moccasins waited in a glass box on a pedestal. The card read, "Seminole moccasins from Oklahoma. $150 crossed out, $100, $75, $50, or best offer." Grandpa Half Moon told Ray, "These put me in the mind of being back home." For a long moment, they both looked at the moccasins, but Ray's mind was mostly on their afternoon plans, and his gaze wandered to the autographed baseball. "We best get a move on," Grandpa said, "to today's Cubs game." Grandpa and Ray left the shop with matching grins. They rolled the rattling elevated train to Wrigley Field and watched the Cubs take on the St. Louis Cardinals. From the first inning on, Grandpa Half Moon told old-time Cherokee, Seminole, and family stories. "Every once in a great while, my Gramps used to wear moccasins," Grandpa said, "instead of his cowboy boots." Grandpa paused a moment to study the Cubs scoreboard. "He used to pitch to me and my cousins too, and Gramps usually struck us out. Then he'd jump in the lake to cool down afterward, just like us kids. The lakes back home in Oklahoma Those are the prettiest lakes I've ever seen. Ray frowned, thinking it over. Not far away, Lake Michigan lapped against the stores of Chicago, a fierce blue blanket alongside the park. It was a pretty lake, Ray decided, a lot bigger than the lakes in Oklahoma. More sailboats. After the 7th inning stretch, Ray and Grandpa Half Moon ordered hot dogs. Now, these Chicago hot dogs, Grandpa said, they're dandy, but every now and then I get a hankering for some of that crackle fried bacon your Aunt Wilhelmina likes to make. You know, that woman fries everything she cooks. I saw her fry a whole turkey once for Christmas, and it was sure enough some big bird. Ray bit into his hot dog. He knew all about Aunt Wilhelmina's cooking. Ray and Grandpa drove their pickup down to visit her and Uncle Leonard in Oklahoma once or twice a year. What he didn't know was why Grandpa Half Moon was thinking so hard today about Aunt Wilhelmina's crackle fried bacon. When the wind carried a home run baseball into the stands, Ray almost caught it. Cheers filled the air, but Grandpa Half Moon didn't make much of a fuss. He was homesick, Ray realized. Ray wiggled his toes inside his high tops with the neon orange shoelaces. He couldn't afford a bus ticket to Oklahoma, but he had an idea. Ray thought about it during the last 2 innings of the game and while riding on the rattling elevated train all the way back to the stop nearest his red brick bungalow. Meanwhile, Grandpa Half Moon talked about this wild-haired mutt he had when he was a kid and how he named it Catastrophe. Grandpa talked about Ray's parents, who were killed by a tornado back when Ray was just a babe. And Grandpa talked about how he used to take Ray's daddy fishing by starlight. At bedtime, the wind breathed against the stained glass pane in Ray's bedroom window. He dumped jangling money, $28.67, out of his jar and onto his woolly blanket. It was the most money Ray had ever owned at one time, but it wasn't enough. Or was it? The sign had said $50 or best offer. Maybe the best offer would be a little less than $30. Maybe the best offer would come from Ray. On Monday after school, Ray marched down the cracked sidewalk. He held tight to his money jar, danced to the rat-a-tat-a clang of the trash can band, and skipped beneath the ruffling branches. When the wind blew into Murphy Family Antiques again, Ray blew in again with it. At the welcome mat, he retied his neon orange shoelaces and said afternoon to Junior Murphy. Then Ray breezed by the table with the elephant leg and the basket full of antique buttons. He paused behind a lady who was carrying a library book. The lady seemed interested in the moccasins. "Do you know if these are real?" she asked. "Native American worn and Native American made?" "I could double check," Junior Murphy answered, "but it might take a while." "I don't have a while to wait," the lady replied, "and I don't walk by this way too often." She hugged the library book a little tighter. "I'll tell you what, I could give you $30 for them now, but that's all my budget will allow." Ray shook his head at the moose. $30 topped his best bid. Just then the wind rushed in. The door sounded kabam! Ostrich feathers fluttered. A Chinese lantern whirled to catch on the moose's antlers. The autographed baseball splashed into the button basket, toppling the pedestal. Buttons whizzed everywhere. Ray thought, "This is my last chance. I'll give $28.67 for the moccasins," he told Junior Murphy, "and I'll pick up every last button, too." "Sorry, Ray," Junior said. "This shop needs the money more than I need the time." The lady looked at Ray like she wanted to say something, but then she set her book on the counter and wrote a check to pay for the moccasins. The wind died silent, and Ray felt like the elephant that had lost a leg on the tabletop. He rocked in his high tops with the orange shoelaces. He stared at the autographed baseball and the mess of buttons. He thought about the stories Grandpa Half Moon had told at the Cubs game and on the train ride home. When the lady opened the door to leave, the wind gusted in and shoved her back over the welcome mat. Suddenly, Ray knew what to do. "Want to trade?" he asked the lady. "I've got some Indian shoes you could use. Beats me who made them, but they're for sure Indian worn." The lady shifted the book beneath her arm and held tight to her purchase. Ray just knew that he and Grandpa Half Moon had lost out. But then the lady's gaze fell to Ray's feet. She chuckled, and they left the shop together. When the wind whispered against the brick bungalow that night, Grandpa slid his feet into the moccasins. "These really take me back," he said. "They feel like home." Come Tuesday morning, at the high school 4 blocks away, the librarian placed a pair of beat-up high tops with neon orange shoelaces in her Native American books display. She propped a laser-printed card to the right of the toes. The card read, "Traded from Ray Half Moon, Cherokee Seminole high tops. Not Indian made, but Indian worn. Guaranteed." Chapter 2, Don't Forget the Pants. As Ray and Grandpa Half Moon climbed a flight of stairs to the front terrace of the rented mansion, Jonah appeared to greet them. "Welcome to the wedding," he said. "I believe, Ray," Grandpa began, smoothing his church tie, "that you and the groom have some business to attend to." Grandpa was right. That afternoon, Jonah, a Polish Mennonite from Chicago, was marrying their friend Nancy Lee, a Choctaw girl who'd moved to town from Norman, Oklahoma. She'd been friends with the Half Moons for only a year or so, but being that every kid in the bride's and groom's families was a girl, Ray had agreed to pitch in as their ring bearer. Ray had never been to a wedding before. He knew he'd have to carry the ring down an aisle in front of a lot of staring people and, worse, a video camera. Ray's stomach flopped and flipped just thinking about it, but he was looking forward to the wedding cake. Jonah bent down in his gray tux. "This was my grandmother's wedding ring," he explained, digging it out of his breast pocket. "Today it'll become Nancy Lee's." Ray watched as Jonah set the white gold band in his palm. Tiny diamonds glittered. The metal felt cool in Ray's hand. "Sure is pretty," said Grandpa, who was carrying Ray's belt, socks, and dress shoes. "I'll take good care of it," Ray said, curling his fingers tight. He looked down at his fist and then handed the ring to Grandpa. We'll take good care of it." Here's our picture. Jonah grinned, all bright blue eyes and dimples. "I'd appreciate that," Jonah said. As it turns out, Nancy Lee remembered everything except a pillow to carry it on. Ray couldn't understand why he'd need a pillow to carry the ring. He'd been carrying things his whole life without a pillow. "That's how it goes with weddings," Grandpa said, slipping the ring into his jacket pocket. "This or that always goes wrong." And we're going to stop right there for today, and your teacher will read a couple of pages from this chapter during your next reading lesson, and then we'll pick up from there. Hope you enjoyed.